The story began within the prestigious grounds of Lapis Lazuli Academy, where the protagonist, Tiara Rose, was enjoying a stroll. Her friends, Florian and Marietta, approached her with heavy hearts, lamenting that the following day marked their graduation and the end of their daily interactions. Tiara hastened to reassure them, promising that she would create opportunities for them to reunite. She reminded them that as the future queen, she would always remain within the Lapis Lazuli kingdom. The two girls acknowledged the truth of her words. Tiara was indeed betrothed to the crown and destined to rule. When the conversation turned to her wedding with Prince Heart Knights, Tiara explained that following graduation, she would undergo a rigorous year of bridal training before the ceremony took place in the cathedral. She solemnly vowed to do her utmost to meet the kingdom's expectations and maintain peace. She introduced herself not merely as Tiara, but as the daughter of the Marquis, a family granted the illustrious name Lapis by the royal family and the crown prince's official fiancé. Later, the atmosphere shifted when Tiara observed Prince Heart Knights looking unusually gloomy. Before she could approach, a strange girl suddenly appeared and embraced the prince, leaving Tiara in a state of bewilderment. It was in this moment of shock that a realization washed over her. Her current reality was actually the setting of an Otome game she had played in her previous life. She realized she had died and reincarnated into the game world, not as the heroine, but as the villainess, Tiara Rose. The scene shifted to Tiara's chambers, where Prince Heart sat beside her. He suggested she rest while he prepared a carriage for her departure. Tiara looked at him, recalling that Prince Heart was the primary capture target of the game and the first prince of the kingdom. Heart broke the silence by asking why she had fainted, cynically suggesting that she might have been trying to garner his attention simply because he had been focusing on the strange girl, Akari. Tiara was taken aback by his accusation, noting that the prince's gaze was dry, cold, and completely unlike the warm character she remembered from the game. She defended herself, explaining that she had fainted due to genuine illness, and apologized for the trouble. However, Heart dismissed her apology with indifference. He stated that although he was practically her fiancé, he had other work to attend to and therefore would not be escorting her to the graduation ceremony the following day. After the prince left, Tiara was left furious that he would refuse to escort his own fiancé to such a significant event. She forced herself to calm down by relying on her meta-knowledge of the story. She recalled the game's main route. The protagonist, a girl possessing powerful magic, would enroll in the academy and captivate Crown Prince Heart, the most popular student. He was scripted to shower the heroine with kindness and romantic affirmations, leading to a grand wedding in the cathedral. Tiara realized with dread that she was not that protagonist. She was the villainess who, in the original narrative, had treated the heroine cruelly out of jealousy. This behavior was supposed to lead to the condemnation event at the graduation party, resulting in the annulment of her engagement. As she rode in the carriage toward her home, Tiara resolved that she would not commit those villainous acts. Since today was the day before the game's finale, she hoped that by changing her behavior, she could avoid the tragic ending. Upon arriving at the mansion, she was greeted by her maid, Felin. Tiara reflected on her family history, noting that the name Lapis was an honor granted only to families who performed great charitable deeds for the crown. Inside, her parents greeted her with a warmth that surprised her, as they were usually quite distant. They had prepared a beautiful dress for her wedding, and her father, the prime minister, had personally procured some of her favorite sweets to present to her. Touched by this gesture, Tiara reflected on the life she had led in this world. She had undergone grueling training since childhood to become a queen worthy of Prince Heart. Her father had taught her statecraft and etiquette, and she had absorbed it all out of love for the prince. Yet, it seemed her feelings had never reached him. It was a strictly unrequited love. For a moment, she considered not attending the graduation party at all to avoid the inevitable humiliation, but she stopped herself. She realized she could not bring trouble or shame upon her kind parents. She resigned herself to the fact that Prince Heart's changed feelings aligned with the game's forced narrative, and she accepted that she likely could not escape her role as the villainess. Elsewhere, Prince Heart was seen whispering a private apology to the absent Tiara, asking for forgiveness for what was to come. The day of the condemnation event, the graduation party arrived. Tiara, Marietta, and Florian gathered to discuss Akari, who had been behaving with excessive familiarity toward Prince Heart Knights. The friends were outraged that Akari dared to cling to him while knowing his fiancé was present. Marietta and Florian swore their loyalty to Tiara, promising to stand by her side no matter what. After the girls departed, Tiara admitted to herself that despite her mental preparation for the condemnation, she was still deeply afraid. Feline, sensing her mistress's anxiety, urged Tiara to contact Lord Heart and demand an escort, warning that Tiara's father would be furious if he saw her enter the party alone. To lift Tiara's spirits, Feline brought out a large selection of sweets. Tiara was delighted, She had loved bread and sweets in her previous life, and eating them brought her genuine happiness. She asked Feline to always bring her such treats to cheer her up, and Feline happily agreed. The moment was interrupted when Akari barged into the room to check on Tiara. Feline attempted to stop her, stating that she could not enter without a prior announcement, but Akari ignored the maid and approached Tiara regardless. Tiara recognized Akari instantly as the Otome game's heroine. Dressed in a luxurious, cute gown and dripping with glittering jewels, Akari embodied the perfect protagonist. She claimed she was worried after Tiara's collapse the previous day and mentioned that Prince Heart was also concerned. Right on cue, Prince Heart entered the room to confirm whether Tiara would be attending the ceremony. He remarked that since she had rested, there should be no issue. Tiara confirmed she would attend and asked Feline to hasten the preparations. Realizing they were interrupting, Akari and the prince excused themselves. The following day, Tiara entered the graduation hall. Everything was exactly as depicted in the game. When she walked through the doors alone, the crowd was astonished, whispering about why the future queen was unescorted and questioning the identity of the girl standing next to the prince. Without missing a beat, Prince Heart announced the annulment of his engagement to Tiara Rose. Though shocked, Tiara gathered her strength. She demanded to know his reasoning, asserting that she had done nothing to deserve such treatment. She pointed out that if he wished to take another consort, there were proper legal procedures he was required to follow. The prince grew angry at her retort, accusing her of being cruel to Akari, specifically citing Akari's ignorance of high society due to her countryside upbringing. Tiara interrupted him to correct the record. She admitted that she had instructed Akari, but only on necessary etiquette, such as kneeling when greeting the crown prince and refraining from dancing with him more than twice, privileges reserved solely for his fiancée. She insisted these were logical laws of the kingdom that the prince should be well aware of. Heart yelled back that Akari had personally told him Tiara was cruel. At this, Tiara realized that defending herself was futile. Whether the heroine had manipulated him or the game's script was forcing the event, the ending seemed immutable. When Heart asked her if she consented to the annulment, she simply answered in the affirmative. Heart then publicly proposed to Akari, declaring she would be the future queen. Tiara thought that perhaps this was the end of it, taking comfort in the fact that she still had her parents and Feline. However, the prince then delivered the final blow. He announced Tiara Rose's banishment from the kingdom. The weight of the sentence crushed her. Banishment meant she would never be allowed to see her beloved parents or Feline ever again. Just as hope seemed lost, a new voice cut through the tension. Prince Aquaste arrived and gently asked Tiara if she was all right. Tiara was stunned by the sudden appearance of the first prince of the neighboring marine forest kingdom. She recognized him immediately as the main character of the game's sequel, a character she had loved since seeing his design, even before his game was released. Prince Aquaste instructed her to stand proudly and with more dignity than anyone else present. When Heart tried to intervene, insisting that Tiara must be condemned for her actions, Aquaste rebuked him sharply. He told Heart that his own words were far harsher than anything Tiara had said. He criticized Heart for annulling an engagement at a celebratory event and for insulting a lone woman in front of the entire court, behaviors he deemed unworthy of a crown prince. Then, to the shock of every attendee, Prince Aquaste declared that he had desperately wanted Tiara Rose to be his queen for a long time. Tiara was astonished that a character from the sequel would propose to her. Aquaste, realizing the suddenness of his proposal, offered her time to consider it. Akari, however, could not stay silent. She protested, claiming such a union was impossible because Tiara was cruel and aggressive, and she brazenly invited Aquaste to join her and Heart instead. Tiara immediately scolded Akari, warning her that she must not touch the crown prince of a neighboring kingdom so casually. Prince Aquaste thanked Tiara for her concern. He then turned a cold gaze toward Akari, reminding her that she knew his status as the first prince of Marine Forest, yet chose to treat him with disrespect. He ordered the guards to take Akari away. Turning back to Tiara, he apologized for causing a commotion by barging in and promised to help her at any time. As the events unfolded, Tiara realized with immense relief that by the intervention of the sequel's prince, they had successfully bypassed the game's bad ending. Tiara apologized for staring at him so intently, acknowledging that his looks were a favorite among the ladies. Hearing this, Prince Aquaste wondered if that meant he could get his hopes up a bit. When she asked why he had proposed to her, he answered that there was only one reason: he had desperately wanted her. Tiara had first met Prince Aquaste a year prior at a soiree. Although they were in the same class at the academy, they hadn't really spoken at all, leading her to wonder why he chose her. He revealed that he had always watched her from the window of the library. He often saw her reading in the shade of a tree, and thought the constant changes in her expression were adorable. She looked so serious when reading, but in the next moment, she would start shyly blushing. When he saw tears in her eyes, he wanted to embrace her badly. Flustered, she covered her face with her hands and asked him to forget that, but he admitted he couldn't. Now that they were finally together, he wanted to see more of her face. Watching her reading under that tree every day, he had become captivated by her so much so that he even surprised himself. However, because she was engaged to Heart Knights, Aquastede knew he could never steal a foreign prince's fiancée, so he originally intended to keep his feelings to himself. After completing his year of studying abroad, he returned home and told himself to forget about her. But then, he couldn't believe his luck and became desperate not to let the opportunity pass him by. He admitted that he thought he was pathetic, but Tiara assured him that wasn't the case at all. When she was standing there all alone, his presence had been very reassuring. He admitted he was a bit shocked when Prince Heart Knights went so far as to banish her, though the thought had crossed his mind to simply take her away as she were banished. As he inhaled the scent of her hair, she asked him not to tease her, but he insisted he was serious. She wondered how he could say all this so calmly, questioning if it was because he was a character in an Otome game or if it was just his personality. It pained him to hear that she doubted him. He loved her so much that he just couldn't contain himself. He lightly kissed her forehead, and unfortunately, they arrived at their destination. As he escorted her out, she thanked him for seeing her home. He asked her out on a date, and she gladly accepted. Graduating from the academy meant she finally had plenty of time. Inside the house, Tiara's father was furious. Her engagement was annulled, and the prince had threatened to banish her from the kingdom. He asked how that fool dared to say such things to his sweet Tiara Rose. Tiara's mother, however, brought up how lovely Prince Aquastede was and asked if Tiara was going to answer him. They all wanted to know how she felt. Tiara thought he was far more than she deserved, wondering if a future where Villainess married the crown prince of a neighboring country was even possible. The next day, Heart Knights demanded the guards let him through to see Akari. Despite his father's orders, Heart Knights promised he wouldn't be long, explaining that he realized his judgment might have been a mistake and needed to speak to her to know for sure. Akari was happy to see him, complaining that she missed him and was dying of boredom and confinement. Hearing the word boredom, he was surprised, as it seemed what happened at the graduation party wasn't on her mind at all. He asked if what Tiara had said that day that Akari hadn't done anything wrong was true. Akari claimed she suddenly remembered, feeling bad because Tiara was mean to her, but since she had him by her side, she felt very reassured. Heart Knight shrugged her off, making her question if Tiara had said something to him. She couldn't believe the Villainess was still involved even after the story was over. She told Heart Knights to get her out of there as soon as he could and to also tell her about Prince Aquastede. She claimed that after what Tiara told her, she wanted to save Aquastede before he got hurt, too. The end of the graduation event marked the end of all the game's events. Tiara contemplated what might happen next. Prince Aquastede was the main character in the sequel, and she couldn't imagine a future where she, the Villainess, became his consort. She feared that if the sequel had a heroine, Aquastede might have a change of heart too, just like Heart Knights. Suddenly, a rock hit her window. Going to check on it, she saw Aquastede waiting outside. He greeted her smoothly, remarking on how beautiful the moon was that night. He asked if she was familiar with the Fairy Star Festival, an event in one episode of The Ring of Lapis Lazuli that the heroine usually gets to see with the character she is closest to. Aquastede used his magic to call the fairies. He then put his jacket on Tiara so she wouldn't catch a cold and rested his head on her shoulder, expressing how happy he was to spend time with her. Looking at the sky, she was awed by the beautiful star shower. He was glad she enjoyed it. Staring at his eyes, she compared their golden glow to the stars, feeling as if they were sucking her in. Later, while having a meal together, the king asked Heart Knights if he had gained anything from meeting with Akari. Heart Knights apologized for going off on his own but reported that he realized he had believed what Akari was saying without even questioning it. He wished he had listened to Tiara more. The king said he had apologized to Tiara for the terrible time she had, but she didn't blame Heart Knights at all. The two of them used to talk all the time, and Heart Knights regrettably remembered that she had kept him in line whenever he was skipping class, helped him work through his nervousness, and told him to carry himself with confidence. She had constantly scolded him because her focus had always been on the future of the kingdom. Heart Knights only now realized she had cared for him so much. Meanwhile, Tiara had moved on and was getting ready to look glamorous for Aquastede. Philin chuckled, thinking Tiara looked like she was having so much fun. It made sense since this was her first date. She had never gone on a single date with Heart Knights. Philin adorned Tiara with a hair ornament made of coral, a specialty of the Marin Forest Kingdom, sure that Aquastede would be pleased when he saw her wearing it. When Aquastede arrived, Tiara's heart was pounding in her chest, and her feet felt like they were floating. She had never felt like this before. She enjoyed the beautiful field of flowers he took her to, which was another experience she had never had before. Sitting down for a picnic under the shade of a tree, she presented some madeleines and cookies she had baked for him. He enjoyed the delicious taste, and she went on about how she loved eating and baking sweets. She explained that madeleines were one of her favorites because they were light and airy but perfectly moist, pairing well with tea, cocoa, and so many other drinks. She admitted she once baked a whole basket full, then got absorbed in a book, and before she knew it, the basket was empty. Aquastide loved how adorable she was when talking about sweets and said he could listen to her forever. He picked up a cookie and told her to open wide. She wasn't expecting that, but she ate it from his hands, finding that this somehow made it taste better. He suddenly held her close and whispered a request to call her Tiara. She noted that he had been calling her Lady Tiara Rose the entire time. She told him it was fine, and he in turn wanted her to call him Aqua. She realized she had never felt anything when Heart Knights called her Tiara. Aqua suddenly embraced her. He didn't know what to do. He was so happy. She worried that being this close, he would notice her heart was racing. Her eyes widened when she noticed his heart was beating just as fast. He caressed her hair, telling her she looked like she was waiting to be kissed right now. He felt it was too bad. He had planned to go on more dates and take his time, but it was no use. In front of him, he couldn't help but want her. He then asked for a favor, for her to feed him a cookie. She did, and while he chewed, she felt like she was feeding an animal. She was glad he enjoyed her cookies so much. Turning around, he noticed the coral hair ornament and asked if it meant he could get his hopes up. Resting his head on her shoulder, Tiara again wondered what would happen to her from here on out. Back at home, she wanted to talk to her father about something. When he guessed it was about Prince Aquastide, she quickly flushed. He admitted he would be sad seeing his daughter marry into another kingdom, but seeing her happy and smiling was what mattered most to him. The next day, Elliot, Prince Aquastide's attendant, greeted her. The two conversed on the differences between the two kingdoms. Marine forest was apparently abundant in natural coral, pearls, and other jewels of the sea, which she thought was every girl's dream. They came across Heart Knights along the way, who froze upon seeing her. He apologized for what happened at the graduation party, which was not what she was expecting. She told him to raise his head because a member of royalty shouldn't bow to just anyone. He felt nostalgic, remembering she always cautioned him about all kinds of things. He thanked her for doing so much for him. She was glad he understood and felt genuinely happy to see the character she loved in her past back on his feet. He went to reach for her, but Aquastide slapped his hand away. Holding Tiara tight in his arms, Aquastide asked Heart Knights what he was trying to do to his beloved fiancée. Thank you for watching this week's anime recap. If you liked the video, please help this channel by leaving a like and subscribe to help us reach our goal of 30K subscribers.